Let's get a bit more familiar with the Hashicorp Terraform website. You can see up here at registry.terraform.io. And this is going to be telling you about any and all things that are Terraform related. So I think any good place to start are the different providers that are offered by Terraform. All of these different providers will have some icon right here. And if you hover over it, you can see that it says official. And then we can also hover over this one. It says partner. And let's go all the way to the end one. You see that it doesn't have an official or a partner tag right there. And these just represent the different levels of trust and overseeing that HashiCorp Vault handles. So the ones that are these badges of honor, which are called officials, those are maintained, controlled, released by HashiCorp. So they're practically first party providers that HashiCorp itself is able to handle. If you go down to the handshake, which are the partner ones, these are ones that are done by other people. They're done by third parties. And they've come to HashiCorp, they've offered themselves as providers, and then HashiCorp gives them the little handshake and says, yes, we viewed your things, we validated them, we think that they're good, so we allow people to be able to use them with ours. And then the last one, which is the one that has nothing, it has no handshake, no badge of honor. Those are just the community ones. So these are other people that like to work with HashiCorp Vault. However, they have not been verified, they have not been validated by HashiCorp themselves. So they could be a bit risky to use. And those are the three different tiers of providers that HashiCorp likes to give out. And you can see that we've been working with Azure. Azure is very important. It's very high up there when it comes to the different providers that you have. And you can also click on them and you can get more information about it. This was updated just 2 days ago with this new version for 4.49.0 right here. If you want to be able to use it within your code, you can always come up here to the use provider, and then it tells you about how you can implement it within Terraform. Terraform underwent a huge change when it reached 0.13 and higher. So if you use less than 0.13 as your Terraform version, then things are very different. But generally speaking, almost everyone uses the higher Terraform versions. And you can just copy this code and you can use this version. And then there's all sorts of things that you can use with the providers, as we've been showing with all the different videos that I've been making. You can go here to view the code for it, the different releases that they've been making for it. They give some examples about how to use it, so you can go more into it. You can see the official releases right here. You can see these cool contributors right here that have helped make this version. And let's go back. So we have the providers up here, and then let's go to the modules. So modules are a lot of what you've seen. They are code that we can use within our Terraform code, and we can come here and we can see more information about them. So we can see what different versions they're using. And there's this one, for example, has had many, many versions over time, and it's always recommended to use the latest version that you can. And then we can see what sorts of submodules are used within it. We can see the kinds of examples that they have right here. And then if we ever want to see the source code of it right here, you can always look here at the source code, and we can open up a new tab, and we can see the kind of code right here. And then the README will tell us how to use these different modules. Hopefully they will give examples. It's quite nice and courteous if they give examples with it. You have different things over here. You can see issues that people have reported about it. You can look at the closed issues to see things that people have talked about in the past. Maybe if you're looking at some errors, you have some pull requests here. that some people who are trying to make changes to the repository, they think that change should exist within it. And then we also have this examples right here, which can show us about how to use the module. And we can just look at it right here. This one is something that's calling a module inside of here. So it goes back to modules, and then it goes back to IAM account alias, right? So they show you how to use all this with this different code right here, and you can view the source code for everything. They have also organized it so that you can view it yourself here. You can see that we have the README file, and then it specifies about what inputs. So if you were going to call the module in your code, these are the inputs you would have to put in it. These are the outputs you can expect. These are the different providers that you would need to have. They're required for them to be used. And then it shows all the different kinds of resources that the module can create. And the specific use cases of these, well, you'd have to go and look into the module yourself about what's created, what you have choices of creating, what are optional, and so on. So it's all kinds of modules here, and this is a good way to be able to view all these modules. We can once again filter it. We've been dealing with Azure, for example, so we're interested in ones like the VNet, and we can view this code here. We can call it. We can see the examples. Oh, okay. Looks like this one was archived back in November of 2024. So this one is no longer being supported. You can see here that says deprecated. Deprecated means that it's going away. It's no longer going to be used, which is a shame because it looks like it's a module that's had a lot of effort put into it. Lots of forks, lots of stars, all of that. But this is one where we can see more about the kinds of inputs that it's going to be asking for. It says required inputs, so you have to put those in. Optional inputs, you don't have to put them in. They specify what the default values are, so if you don't give anything, that's what it will be. We can look at the outputs that it gives, the dependencies, kinds of resources that it can make. The list goes on. So we have all of these over here. We have policy libraries. Policy libraries is something that most people are not aware of. I don't know that, but I just assume it because very few people have brought it up with me. But these are different policies that you can enforce towards your Terraform cloud or Terraform enterprise. And I may show a video about how to do that on a later video. As you can see here with the policy libraries, it's still in the beta version. So it's still at an early point, which is likely why many people don't know about it. And then other things here, people have not put a lot of effort into. You can see this is for AWS, cloud automation. It has a version right here. But even when you look at it, it says the last time it was worked on was 7 months ago. And that's one of the newer ones. This one was worked on 3 years ago. This one was worked on a year ago. So these policies are not used very much. But what they are ways that you can configure things within your code to make sure that you're following certain policies. And then you can look on your Terraform cloud or you can look on your Terraform enterprise to see whether those policies are actually being followed or not and what you need to do about them. Run tasks. Directly integrate third-party tools and services to manage cost, security, compliance, and more, or enhance your workflow with custom logic. So these tasks are optional things that you can include in your repositories if you want to try and enhance them very much. I've never used them myself. Looks like we have some options about how to use these kinds of things. So you can open it up. They tell you about what kinds they are: infrastructure management, no code / low code workflow. This is about security and authentication. So you can check those. Now, another very important aspect, and you've seen me show this once or twice, is how they tell you to use the providers, because we've seen that they have the Azure RM provider, which allows us to have a remote access to Azure RM using our Terraform code, and we need to know about how to use those things. So we have the providers, the ones that Hashicorp allow, Azure RM, and then it always goes to the latest version if possible. So we have the Kubernetes cluster that we have created before. The Kubernetes cluster is very important. It always likes to give an example about how it's supposed to be made. So it likes to show the code right here. Will this work? It tells about the different arguments and what sort of settings they will check on it. So if you are making this on the Azure portal, then you can go and you can look inside of it. And when you see some setting, when you see something, and then you say, oh, I want to modify that, then you can go ahead and look at this right here, such as the DNS prefix as an example. Must be between 1 and 54 characters. If you change this, then Terraform will create a new resource. And it's the process of just reading and understanding this. You might need to juxtapose them, and you need to look at the resource that you have on your Azure subscription as well as what they have here. And if they don't have everything, that likely means that it's because it's a new feature that Azure has had. And it will take the Terraform, the Hashicorp people a little bit of time to play catch up, but I think they're quite diligent people and they like to update everything. They know that Kubernetes clusters are hard to manage, so they give a lot of resources right here and the missing ones they're going to add to it. So there's a lot here. You usually don't see pages that are this long, but they talk about what all the different variables are, what each of them do. They point out important things right here. They also may point out about when something is being deprecated, so how it might be removed in a later version of it. But it's also important to note that this is the most up-to-date information right here. So when you come up here to the top, it has the user provided. So all of this goes along with this version of Azure RM. So if you are using an earlier version of Azure RM, then the variables may be different. So it's important to keep all of these things in mind and make sure that you are following along with what can and what can't be used. Let's see, if we go all the way to the bottom, it should tell us what outputs are allowed. Attribute references. So in addition to the arguments listed above, the following attributes are exported. If you remember when we had modules and resources, there were certain things that we could output from those resources. So these are the kinds of resource references that you can get outside of it. So it's the ID, you can get what the current Kubernetes version is. There's a lot of outputs here. So some of them are objects, so you would not only need to go into the network profile, but you would also need to go into the load balancer profile to define that. And then this also says that it's a block, so you'd have to go within a block, within a block, within a block, and however far it goes, just to get the effective outbound IP resource IDs. Now, if there's a certain resource that you're looking for, you can always search for it over here. For example, I'm aware that there is a service bus that we haven't had anything to do with. So if I go to Azure RM, it is not loading. Okay, Azure RM, and then I'm going to look for the service bus. Then it shows me all the different resources that are available there. Okay, here it is. Azure RM Service Bus namespace. And I can look here, I can click on it here, and I can see what their example is of using it. So they say that I need to be using the Azure RM provider, and it needs a resource group to be put inside of it. The capacities specifies the capacity when SKU is premium. Capacity can only be 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, but when the SKU is basic or standard, the capacity has to be 0. And these are how all of these resources are checked. If you're going to try and create a service bus namespace on your Azure portal, you'd want to look about how it's made here. There's also authorization rules that you can make for the service bus namespace, custom managed identity. You can make queues, which are very important for a service bus namespace. So you can look for everything right there. You'll want to start it with an Azure RM service bus, and you can search for everything here. So this is a very important website if you are on in your Terraform and Hashicorp career. These are very important things to know, and you'll come here again and again. There are some things that you just need to keep in mind. I think the biggest is the provider. You need to be aware of what providers you're using and what's supported and what isn't supported. When you run your Terraform plan, you will also get moments where it will tell you that there's some warning going on. It's saying, "Oh, be aware that what you're doing right here is something that will be deprecated in later versions." Maybe they're going to rename the variable, or maybe they're going to delete the resource, or something like that. I've seen many over time. So keep in mind with those if you're always using the latest versions of the providers that you have.